Let's pick up then, Brian, where he left off, which was talking about tariffs. And for people who are maybe wondering, well, what does electricity have to do with AI? It takes a tremendous amount of electricity to power, particularly data centers, right? So, but apart from that, this is really a question of tariffs and a question of the new tariffs that the president says now, again, will be in place August 1st. Where are we landing on all of this?
Yeah, and by the way, we had been talking so much about the July 9 deadline, which is tomorrow, but effectively that no longer exists because of these letters that have gone out. And then there was an executive order that the president signed that said that the new deadline is going to be August 1st. So that buys all the countries that are trying to negotiate with the United States a few more weeks to try to get something done. And I want to point out that the president, despite just now describing the situation right now as letters or deals, that's not really the case. If you read the text of each letter, which has been sent basically identically to all these countries, it says that it's basically here's the tariff rate that you're going to face effective August 1st that the United States will begin collecting on, but they can be modified upward or downward depending on our relationship with your country. That reads to me like a way to get countries to the negotiating table, and this does not read to me like a deal. So I think an important clarification on that point.
Can I stop you there? And I'll go back to the tariff specifically. A little bit different than not just the Obama administration where you worked, but every previous administration in modern times. Tariffs involve negotiations. This is the president saying, I'm going to tell you where we're starting. I'm going to put it in writing, and then maybe not, we'll have some negotiations. There's too many of them, he said, to talk to them individually.
Yes, there's no reliability, there's no consistency. And to remember, Chris, what he was talking about, he said basically from the 18th, 19th century, almost up until the 20th century, America had tariffs. They had tariffs to protect indigenous industry. We were competing against Great Britain and Germany that had much more sophisticated economies. This idea now that you can't have a trade imbalance with another country is an old-fashioned idea that just doesn't exist anymore. I was looking this morning. We have a $25 billion trade deficit with Switzerland. Why? Because Americans like buying Swiss watches. You know, Milton Friedman said, I have a big trade deficit with my barber. He doesn't want to buy anything from me. It's a notion that is not consistent with the modern economy. And I don't think Americans should be fooled by that.
See, for me, it would be Swiss chocolate, but I have nothing against watches. So let's go back to the countries that are at least seemingly most immediately impacted and what it means for all consumers.
Yeah, well, among the letters that were published yesterday were letters to countries that are very, very, very small in terms of their trade relationship with the United States, countries like Laos and Cambodia, but also some major traders as well, like South Korea and Japan, where the stated tariff rate is going to be 25%. But Rick, to your point, I want to point out that those numbers, we don't really know where they're coming from. Now, the president did have that big poster board the first week of April in the Rose Garden where he said these are the so-called reciprocal tariffs that are going to be needed to make for fair trade in the United States. But reciprocal implies it's what the other country is tariffing American goods going into their country. But when you look at the actual calculation from the CEA of how that number is brought about, it has no accounting for the actual tariff rate that another country applies. It is an estimate of what tariff rate would be needed to close the trade deficit with that country, which, again, that's not really how the modern economy works globally. You're not trying to close deficits because by sheer virtue of the fact that in Madagascar they make vanilla extract that we don't make here in the United States, to my knowledge. Maybe I might be wrong about that, but that's a reason for why that trade deficit exists, because there are certain goods that you can't get from certain places.
But for the average consumer who's trying to figure out, let's be clear, Amazon, Target, Walmart, they're all starting their big, multi-day sales today. What should I buy now? What's going to go up in price? What do I do as somebody who has a budget? There really isn't an answer, is there?
No. And the other kind of paradox about this is that when you put a tariff on another country, we're collecting duties from that other country. That's the billions that he's supposedly saying. But when you put a high tariff on that other country, they stop exporting to the United States, so the duties go down. So it's not something that will create a lot of wealth in the long run.
And to your question about the consumer impact, again, I think the story here is that even if the tariff rates are put into effect on August 1st, it would take months for retailers to bleed
Yes.
that down to the actual price tags that you see at the store. But again, whether or not the tariff rates go up on August 1st is an open question. The president's rhetoric changed. Yesterday, he was asked about that August 1st deadline. He said that it's not 100% firm, but then he posted on Truth Social and very heavily implied during this engagement with the press just now that it is indeed 100% firm. So we don't know.
Well, Peter Baker, he also suggested in this Q&A that's continuing to go on right now that he's been misrepresented, as changing his mind. But where does all of the tariff where do all the tariff discussions stand? And do we have any idea where all of this is going?
Sorry. So, yeah, he changes his mind all the time, Chris. You know that, obviously. We've just talked about that. The July 9th deadline is now the August 1st deadline. At one point, Scott Bessent said we could still negotiate up to Labor Day. It's a hard thing for businesses in foreign countries to grapple with because they have to make plans. They have to assume certain expectations in order to move forward. And of course, he changes his mind all the time. And he changes his mind depending on who's in the room with him and how flattering they are to him and what kind of deal he thinks he can get from them. So, look, this is the way he does business. He thinks it's been a successful formula for him in business over the course of his time as a real estate developer and his course of the first term of his presidency and now 4 or 5 months into his second term.
All right. Because you talked about the fact that flattery sometimes works with this president, I want to make a turn here because we were speaking when we went into the president about Israel and the latest on Benjamin Netanyahu being here, the conversations that they have been having. Peter, Trump has made no secret of the fact that he would love to have a Nobel Peace Prize. And Benjamin Netanyahu, who is in a very different place than Donald Trump is right now on what should be the next step in the war with Gaza, had a kind of announcement to make. Let's play that to remind people who may not have seen it.
So I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well-deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know. Wow. Thank you very much. Coming from you in particular, this is very meaningful. Thank you very much, Bibi.
So what kind of gamble, if any, is Benjamin Netanyahu making here? Is the suggestion, well, I'm going to nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize. Maybe I'll get him a little closer to where I want to be in the situation with Gaza?
Yeah, it's just old-fashioned flattery. There's nothing more to it. Everybody knows that Trump is not going to win a peace prize for bombing Iran. That would be the first Nobel Peace Prize given for using bunker-busting bombs, right? And everybody knows that Bibi Netanyahu is not going to be a person who has influence with the Nobel Committee. This is a man who's considered by much of Europe, anyway, to be a war criminal, rightly or wrongly. He does it in order just to tell the president, gosh, I'm on your side. Yes, I think you're amazing. And yes, please listen to what I have to say about how Gaza should go forward. Everybody knows this is Trump's, this is how you work with Trump. I mean, in the first term, Trump used to brag that Shinzo Abe, the Japanese prime minister, had nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. What he didn't tell people, and we reported in our book, my wife and I, is that he personally had asked Shinzo Abe over dinner to put him in for that prize so that he could brag about it. It's a thing for him. It's an obsession for him. If he does bring peace to the Middle East, then he obviously would have a greater claim to it. But usually war is not the way you win one of those Nobel Peace Prizes.
The other statement that he made, Rick, is about Ukraine. And we do know that he made the announcement that he was going to send more weapons to Ukraine, basically because he said that he's getting a lot of BS, although he used the full vulgarity. Do we call it vulgarity anymore? From Putin on Ukraine. Tell me about your thoughts when you heard his statements about Ukraine. And again, he doesn't like to say that he's flip-flopped on things, but it did seem like it wasn't so long ago he was done with giving Ukraine anything.
Yes, Chris, it's hard to understand why he changes his mind and why he fluctuates. But I have to say I welcome the fact that he talks about giving more weapons to Ukraine, javelins as well as defensive weapons. He says, and I'll take him at his word, that he doesn't like the killing that's going on there. He reprimanded Vladimir Putin.
He seems pretty much fed up with Vladimir Putin, or at least did in that moment.
Yes. Again, I welcome that. The only thing that will bring that war to an end is keeping funding Ukraine. The European Union, as he derogates them all the time, but the European Union has given as much or more money to Ukraine as we have. So if we continue funding them with the European Union, I actually think, paradoxically, that would lead to a potential peace effort. But if we stop giving them weapons, Putin will continue to fight there and not stop.
And there are allies, Peter, who have been quoted as saying the problem this creates, right, for Volodymyr Zelensky, that it creates for Ukraine. They don't know how to plan. They don't know what they're going to get. And for Europeans who are also trying to, in some cases, backfill what they think the United States is going to fall back on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, he was supplying these defensive weapons till a week or so ago, and his Pentagon cut it off, and now he's supplying them again. How do again, like the tariffs, like so many other things, how do you make plans based on that kind of back and forth? He has made clear he doesn't feel very strongly about defending Ukraine, but you're right, I think, and Rick, I think, is right that he has grown tired of Vladimir Putin. He has begun to see the Vladimir Putin that everybody else has long seen, which is that he's not somebody who's interested in peace in Ukraine. Trump thought he could come in, and his relationship with Putin was so close that he could snap his fingers and they would end the war. He told us time and time again during last year's campaign he would solve it within 24 hours. Obviously, he's discovered Putin doesn't have any interest in solving it in 24 hours. So the question is, at some point, does Trump lose patience with the war altogether and back off helping Ukraine defend itself and leave Ukraine to Putin's mercies, which is, in fact, probably what Putin is gambling for?